All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a concept that's an absolute pillar of macroeconomics, the consumption function. I know, it sounds a little academic, but stick with me, because this is the engine that drives a massive part of our economy. It helps explain everything from why a tax cut might boost the economy to why governments sometimes send out stimulus checks.
So here's what we're going to tackle. We'll start with the basic idea and the formula behind it. Then we'll see what it actually looks like on a graph. After that, we'll get into the fascinating psychology of why we spend the way we do, and finally, we'll explore all the different things that can push us to either spend more or save more.
All right, let's kick things off with a pretty simple question that has a really powerful answer. What's the connection between the money we earn and the money we actually go out and spend?
Well, you guessed it. Economists have a name for that. It's called the consumption function, and it's one of their most fundamental tools for understanding and even trying to predict how we all behave with our money, from a single person to an entire country.
And believe it or not, this whole huge idea is wrapped up in one surprisingly simple formula. It might look a little like algebra class at first, but every single part of it tells a really interesting story about how we spend. So let's break it down piece by piece.
So first, you've got C. This one's easy. It's the big one. It just stands for the total amount of consumption, which is all the spending on all the goods and services across the whole economy.
Then there's A. This is what we call autonomous consumption. The easiest way to think about this is as your survival spending. You know, the bare essentials you need to cover just to exist, like food and rent. It's the amount you'd have to spend even if you had absolutely zero income, maybe by using your savings or borrowing money. Okay, now we get to B, and this is where the human psychology really kicks in. This is the marginal propensity to consume, or MPC for short. Basically, it asks this question. If I give you an extra $1, how much of it are you going to go out and spend? Is it 70 cents, 80 cents, 95 cents? That fraction, that's your MPC.
And last but not least, YD. This stands for disposable income. And this is super important. It's not your total salary. It's the actual money you have left in your pocket after taxes. It's the income you actually get to dispose of, either by spending it or by saving it.
Okay, so we've got all the pieces of the puzzle. What happens when we put them together and draw a picture? What does this relationship actually look like?
And this chart just lays it all out so clearly. You can see along the bottom that's your disposable income, YD. As it goes up, you move to the right. And on the side, you have consumption, or C. And that line shows exactly what you'd expect. As our income rises, so does our spending.
And if you look a little closer, you can literally see that formula playing out. Where the line hits that vertical axis, even at zero income, that's your A, your autonomous gotta-have-it spending. And the steepness of the line, its slope, that's B, your marginal propensity to consume. So a really steep line means we tend to spend a lot of any new money we get.
You know what? Let's plug in some actual numbers to see how this works in the real world. Let's say your baseline A spending is 100, and your B, your MPC, is 0.8, meaning you spend 80 cents of every extra dollar. Well, if your disposable income, YD, is 1,000, you just do the math. Your total spending, C, comes out to 900. And what about the other 100? Simple, that's what you saved.
So all this math is great, but what's the human story behind it? Why do we actually behave this way with our money? Well, this takes us to a really core idea from one of the most famous economists ever. This brings us to the legendary economist John Maynard Keynes. He called it his fundamental psychological law. And all it says is that as a general rule, when people get more money, they spend more of it, but not all of it. There's always a chunk that gets saved. And that simple, intuitive idea, that's really the heart and soul of the entire consumption function.
Now, if we want to get a little more technical for a second, economists break this down even further. There's what's called the average propensity to consume, the APC. That's just the total slice of your income you spent. But then there's the MPC we've been talking about, which is just about how you spend your next dollar. And this is a really key distinction, because while your overall spending rate might go up and down, your habit for what you do with that next dollar, your MPC, that tends to stay surprisingly stable.
Okay, so it's super important to remember that the line on that graph we saw, it's not permanent. It doesn't just sit there forever. The whole thing can actually shift up or down for an entire country. And that's because there are all sorts of factors that influence our collective spending mood.
First, let's talk about the obvious economic stuff. Think about it. If the stock market is soaring, you might feel wealthier and spend more, even if your paycheck didn't change. On the other hand, if interest rates go up, Getting a loan for a new car suddenly gets more expensive, and saving your money looks a lot better. But maybe the biggest one of all is just what we expect to happen. If you start hearing rumors about a recession, you're probably going to clutch your wallet a little tighter, just in case.
But it's not all about dollars and cents. Our spending is also shaped by who we are and where we come from. You've got some cultures where saving for your grandkids is the most important thing, and others where it's all about enjoying the moment. And age matters too. A country full of young people starting families is going to have very different spending patterns than a country with an older, retired population. All these things are working in the background, shaping our entire economy.
And that brings us to the big takeaway here, the final powerful thought. Once you understand the formula for spending, and you know all the economic and psychological levers that can shift it, well, you can see exactly how policymakers use this knowledge. When they want to stimulate the economy, they might cut taxes or send out checks. Why? Because they're putting more disposable income in your hands, and they're counting on your marginal propensity to consume to turn a good chunk of that directly into spending. So you see, understanding the consumption function isn't just theory. It's one of the main steering wheels for the entire economy.